Welcome once again to On the Record and to Valma James. Valma, we're going to talk about the NHS, and there's good and bad. It's a juggernaut, it's a monster, it's massive. Maybe this is some of the problems that you have experienced
Yes,
because your voice has not been heard and many others. Tell
yes.
us about that.
Well, I do agree with you. It's a massive institution, the NHS. And the reason I'm doing this program is about the patient's voice. Does it matter within the NHS? When a patient complains about a service, the quality of treatment they receive, who listens to them? And from my experience as a social worker and a nurse, having worked with service users and try to give them the best care and listen to their voice, me being on the other side demonstrated to me that the voice doesn't matter. I was responsible for developing services and policies and also engaging service users in their care management. I was a forensic social worker prior to my illness in 2023, and I'll just share that experience with you. I was working as a social worker in a private hospital, taking care of individuals with autism and learning disability. And I made every effort to make sure that their voice was heard. But during October 23, I found that myself suffering from major seizures, and I went to the local NHS trust in my area, and they couldn't explain why I was having these seizures.
Were you referred there by your GP?
Yes, I was. I was referred because I was getting low blood pressure. I'm a diabetic type 2. Anyway, so I went to I was with my son, and all of a sudden I lost consciousness. And then we went to the L&D. They saw me, and I went back to work. I was working in Barnet, and in the team meeting, I woke up, and the manager said to me that I had lost consciousness for 5 minutes, and so they called my son. I was taken to the local hospital. There, they were taking blood, and I had a major seizure. I woke up and found all these doctors around me. So they admitted me to a ward, and I was there. They were supposed to do my observations, monitor my seizures, and I woke up one morning around 2 o'clock with severe chest pain and looked at the monitor because I had a I was on the ECG machine and also had a portable ECG monitor. And I woke up with this severe pain, as I said, and saw that my blood pressure was 219 over 119, and my pulse was 119. And so I shouted out, asked the nurses to call the doctor. Well, really, they're supposed to be looking at my monitor. Next to me was a care assistant. He was just looking at the monitor. And the doctor came and sat on my bed. And I said, you're obviously very tired. She said, yes. And then nothing was done. The next morning, it was the medical round, and the consultant came, and he had his medical students with him. And he said, you're medically fit to go home. So I said, how can I be medically fit to go home? Did you see my ECG reading? And he didn't comment. And he said, I said, how is my son going to manage my seizures? He said, take the pill and live with the pain. I said, are you saying to me, take the pill and live with the pain? I said, what sort of doctor are you? And he walked off. The sister came to me, she said, we want your bed. So I said, how do you want my bed? So they discharged me to the discharge lounge. There I woke up again. My blood pressure went up to 200. another doctor came to see me, and he said, "You can't be discharged, you have to go to the cardiology ward." I went to the cardiology ward. Another doctor came to see me, and he said, "It's amazing you're alive." I said, "Why?" He said, "Your heart had stopped for 16.5 seconds and you need an emergency operation." And so within a half an hour, I was down in surgery, being fitted with a pacemaker. So the cardiologist obviously was very concerned, and he felt that my seizures probably wasn't related to my heart. But anyway, he felt that I gave consent to have the pacemaker fitted. Anyway, so there were times when after that, there were times I felt very unwell, and the local trust doctor made a appointment for me, but this was by phone. But on that morning, I felt so unwell that I decided just to take a taxi up to the appointment. And I asked reception, I explained to reception that I wasn't feeling well. I had a telephone consultation, but I needed to come because I felt weak and dizzy. And so she said, okay. So I was waiting. And then when I saw the doctor, a young doctor, he said to me, next time, well, I won't see you. I'll see you on this occasion, but I won't see you next time. You have to have a telephone consultation. And I explained to him how unwell I felt. And he was prescribing a medication that I had side effects from. And I said, I can't take that medication because it gives me side effects. Anyway, so I made a complaint regarding the way I was treated. I felt it was age discrimination because I'm in my pension age, and I felt that his manner in terms of telling me to take the pill and live with the pain discounted my health.
Can I ask you one question at this stage?
Yes.
Have you experienced anything like this before?
Never, never. I had no history of anything like this before.
And the doctors that you met, often there is a language problem. The NHS basically employs twice as many foreign doctors and nurses than any other health institution in the world. And
Well,
often we get complaints. Well, I can't understand you, doctor. Can
yeah.
you explain that?
Yeah, well, the doctor spoke English. I mean, I had no problem with his communication. But I must say that I've been informed that there's been a number of complaints against him in terms of the way he treats his patients. But yes, I must agree with you. Whilst I was on the ward, there was a number of staff who wasn't able to communicate effectively with me. And in fact, the assistant at the time wasn't very fluent in the English language. I had concerns about that, but because I have been involved in promoting equality, I thought about it and I did mention it along the way in terms of my concerns. But that was one incident in terms of receiving the treatment and then making a complaint to the NHS, to this particular NHS. And they recently, I received my MP's been involved in this, and recently I received a call, email to say that they've closed my case. Well, they haven't even spoken to me. And so I wrote back and said, well, how can you close my case when you actually haven't had a face-to-face discussion with me about my concerns? So I find it totally biased. So I'm still waiting because there's no way that their complaints procedure is actually working because they never spoke to me. Nobody has said, I've requested meetings and they haven't responded. I've asked for my medical notes, they haven't sent them. So I'm pursuing that. And another occasion where, because I suffer from a condition called autonomic dysfunction, where my vagus nerve can dysfunction, and it's a rare condition. My blood pressure can drop right down, and I can faint. And so on this occasion, I was at home. My daughter came to see me. I left the house, was walking to went for a walk, and I perceived that I fainted at the bus stop, at the lights. And the next thing I knew, found myself with all these people around me, two police officers, a blonde police officer and another one, and found myself strapped down in an ambulance trolley. And I said, why am I strapped? Where are you taking me? And they said, we're taken to the hospital. I said, why? So they strapped in. All I can remember was waking up and being taken with a support worker and saying that they're taking me to the mental health unit. And I was protesting about this. I said, why? So anyway, this white van with no markings of NHS, anything on it, they're trying to put me in. And I said, I'm not going. I said, why are you taking me? Anyway, they forced me, three men forced me into this van and took me to this place. And then they brought me back. And then the next thing I found myself in a secure unit. And I said, why am I here? I said, I'm a social worker, I'm a nurse. Why am I here? Why are you treating me? And because of my condition, I was having severe diarrhea, severe urine incontinence. They put a glass of water and a plate on the floor in front of me. And I'm crying, absolutely this actually frightened. And it just so happened that somebody who walked in, I knew his wife, and I said, I know I won't mention the name. I said, you're my friend's husband. He says, Valma. And then he said, I was there for 3 days, but knowing the fact that I'm a diabetic, type 2, nobody took my blood investigations, and nobody listened to me. Anyway, he took me to another hospital. I mentioned the ward, Fountain Court, and there I was asking the clinical nurse, the manager. I said, "Can you tell me why am I here?" I said, "Can I see the psychiatrist?" So it took me 3 days. I asked to see a social worker. I met her for about half an hour to do an appeal. Never saw her again. I saw the doctor, and he said to me, he's doing an assessment. He had another doctor in the room. So I said, what? So I said, he said, I'm going to ask you a question. So he asked me 2 questions. What was the name of the Prime Minister? And at that time, I couldn't remember the Prime Minister's name, because his name is not an easy name to remember anyway. And I expressed that to him. So he said, no. I said I couldn't remember at the time his name. So he said, what date it was? I said, it was the 18th. He says, you're 1 day off. So I said to him, what's my diagnosis? He says, cognitive impairment, dementia. I said, how can you diagnose me, but are based on 2 questions? Who's the Prime Minister and what date it was? And I was only 1 day out. He said, I'm going to put you on section 3. I said, you're going to put me on section 3? He said, and I was just totally alarmed. And so I asked for a second opinion. To date, I have never had a second opinion. Anyway, whilst I was on that ward, part of my condition, I was supposed to drink 3 litres of water a day because of my autonomic dysfunction. I was only allowed 2 jugs of water, and I had to empty and show the empty jug to the nurse in charge. And one morning I woke up, one night I woke up and there's 3 people on top of me giving me an injection. I'm fighting them, asking them why they're doing this. And they gave me an injection in my buttocks. And I was very traumatized by this. And I complained. I'm getting a bit upset about this. I complained to the manager. I asked to see the manager and complain. I asked them to contact my cardiologist. I said that I needed to go and see my cardiologist because I felt my pacemaker had moved. They refused. They didn't make the appointment. And I was complaining about the way I was treated. I wasn't allowed out to get fresh air, whilst other patients were allowed to go out and get fresh air. So I was just institutionalized, completely institutionalized. And I asked to see an advocate. An advocate came on the ward who was seeing another patient, and I saw her. And I said to her about the way I was treated. She says, "I'll move you to a nicer ward." So they moved me to another ward. On that ward, Populars, the treatment was even worse. I was what I observed about the treatment of other patients absolutely appalling, and I was very concerned, and because at the time I was complaining and still requesting to see a second opinion doctor, and they they I had my tribunal, and the panel said that they didn't find any cognitive impairment. But when I told them that I feel about my autonomic dysfunction and I perceived that I might have fainted, they said that they wanted that to be looked into, but they had no concern about my cognition, and they did not agree with the concern.
Valma, there are a number of things that are coming out here that are
Yes,
very common in our experience.
really.
Yes, first of all, take that pill and go home.
Yes,
Was your first bad experience, let's put it that way.
yes,
Now, with your medical background, you were able to protest,
yes.
but other people would have said, right, I'm going.
Well, that's what happens. That is exactly what happens. And that's what I'm concerned about. You know, the fact that I spent my whole over 30, 40 years fighting for patients, fighting to make sure that they got a good service. I mean, that was my role in the health service, you
Yeah,
know.
now the health service pays out billions in compensation every year. It's massive. Time and time again, we find nothing is joined up
Yes,
and the patient suffers.
almost
There's
definitely.
an awful lot of control in a hospital situation.
Yes,
It's summed up by we know better than you. You're
exactly.
not fit to know because you're poorly, they make the excuse.
Disempowering, absolutely disempowering. And the fact is that instead of empowering the patient, they disempower, and that impacts on the patient's confidence, their self-esteem, and their trust. That's the fundamental thing here. And to go on with my story, whilst I was on this particular ward, I felt very unwell and I asked to see the doctor. And I was protesting. And the next thing I knew, 2 members of staff came, picked me up, one at my holding my shirt, my at the top of my chest, the other one holding my leg, carried me from the dining room to the clinical room, and in there they tried to put my cardigan in my mouth, telling me that they've had enough of me, and I'm struggling to stop them hurting me, and knocked over the trolley. And the RGN is preparing an injection, gives me an injection, pushes me out of the clinic room, and throws my cardigan in the corridor. And I'm in tears and yet again traumatized. and I make a complaint, nothing is done. The perpetrators were allowed to continue to work on the ward, and every time I saw them, I had to remove myself. Under the safeguarding policy, which I complained about, they should have been removed from the ward. They were still on the ward serving and being in my presence. I complained, I pointed out to the staff who these perpetrators was. I contacted the police to complain about my treatment, and the police never turned up. I phoned my bank and told them that I felt that I was illegally detained. And the next thing I know, the charge nurse says to me, I want your phone because you phoned the police and you phoned your bank, and you're not allowed to use the phone, and you're not allowed to use other patients' phones. So I was then isolated. I was told that I wasn't to speak to the patients. And at one time, I was giving patients water because I noticed some of them were not having water. I was told not to give them water. The cups, the cups were removed. Anyway, the second traumatization was I was told that my children were going to come and see me. So the door is near the entrance. I heard the bell ring. I went out thinking it was my children. It was a family. And the door opened, and I held the door. And the next thing I knew, my finger was caught under the door. And I'm screaming my head off, shouting, please help me. My finger is under the door. Nobody came. I had to remove my finger. My nail bed came off, and nobody. I said I needed to go to the A&D because I felt I needed a tetanus injection and for it to be seen because the nail bed was removed. Nobody came. I had to look after that finger myself. When I asked to see a doctor, he looked at me and he said, we stick a plaster on. I said, how can you stick a plaster on it? I said, it needs to be seen. Nothing was done. And that was traumatizing. And I mean, I don't even know where to start. I never realized that to the extent. And the other occasion, I was talking to the ward manager. I looked behind me, about 6 members of staff. I said, why are they here? They've come to give an injection. I said, what injection? They were giving me dopo injection. And I managed to escape, got under my bed, and they're trying to get me from under the bed because I was frightened. And I'm shouting, help. And they gave me an injection in my arm, and then they sent me a letter to say that they made an error. So I said, what error did you make? They should have given me the injection in my arm. And the thing is, the perpetrator that carried me was the one that was holding me for them to give me the injection.
Now, you've mentioned the name perpetrator.
Yes.
Now, that signifies that you've been abused in all this.
Yes. I complained of elderly abuse.
Now, has somebody got hold of your name and said, oh, she's trouble, and therefore you've got to obey their rules?
Well, funny enough, when I was making a complaint and everything, one of the medical doctors said to me, Valma, be vulnerable. Well, when somebody says that to you, it means comply. It means comply. It means just go through the system.
Right, there's another phrase, the system. If there was an alternative, i.e., as an example, more private medicine available at reasonable cost, you'd have been round there like a shot, I presume.
Yeah.
Because you're paying for it,
Mm-hmm.
therefore the patient genuinely comes first. Whereas
Yeah.
in the NHS, you join the queue, you wait your turn, and the doctor always knows best.
Well, I think my concern is breach of policy. Firstly, I complained regarding elderly abuse. Their safeguarding policy, I didn't see nothing that wasn't even readdressed. I looked on their walls. And I've asked for their safeguarding policy. Also, consent. Nobody asked for my consent for the treatment. Nobody. You know, the doctor's supposed to give you ask for your consent to take medication. I was just automatically given depot, which, having spoken to a colleague of mine who is a medical practitioner, because I was concerned that that itself can cause me psychosis, and apparently depot causes psychosis. So the fact that I requested a second opinion and that wasn't afforded to me, the fact that um, I asked and the social worker disappeared. So I was in for the whole period under Section 3, totally traumatized. And still, I am making a complaint and waiting for that to be readdressed. I've asked for my notes. And what I can't understand, why was I dumped in an acute mental health service? Is it because I was victimized? Because I had made a complaint to about the medical consultant who would have been responsible for that medical ward? Why wasn't I sent there for observations? They have my records.
The other thing that occurs to me again, Thelma, in all this is that you've got a situation where the medics often close ranks.
Most definitely, yes.
And they will say, oh, well, we've got a difficult patient here. I've got to have a consensus. Would you agree with me, etc. The other bogey word is ombudsman, because the amount of guilty findings coming through that system is very, very small. And therefore, the problem is much bigger than even you are mentioning now. And to be taken into a particular hospital, and a lot of these hospitals have got an existing bad name.
Yes.
You don't want to go there. Stay
Yeah.
out of hospital. You'd be worse going in there.
Yeah. Well, I'm very fearful of being admitted to that particular hospital in my locality. And I feel also that the fact, I'll give you an incident. In fact, I received a call from the NHS ombudsman, a gentleman, it was a male voice, and he said to me, I'm just inquiring whether you're satisfied with the service. I said, how can I be satisfied with the service when I've made a complaint and it hasn't been, and I've had no feedback on the investigation? So I refuse to participate in their quality assurance.
We're in a tick box society,
Exactly.
and too many middle management, upper management, and tick boxes. Too much DEI covering people's backsides.
Yeah.
Not interested in the patient. It's truly awful. Now, having said the bad news, the good news is that you are achieving lots of things through, well, you're involved in hospital radio, which is tremendous. You're
Yes.
involved in this centre, which gets people together and does the work of our NHS. But because it's in the community, dare one say, there's lots of love and care, and people are really being helped. Just to explain that.
Okay. Well, I am a presenter, and I do a program called Your Body's Your Temple, and that's really because having worked with across health and social services, understand some of the concerns and issues that patients are presented with. So I use it as a way of educating the community about taking responsibility for their health, self-advocacy, because I think self-advocacy is important. They need to understand, one, about their body and the sort of questions that they need to ask, and and ensure that they ask the questions. They shouldn't be disempowered. They should feel that they have equal right to say, look, I don't understand this medication. I don't understand this operation. Please tell me, educate me so I can make an informed decision. And so that's what I do, because I know, the NHS has limited resources. So, individuals really have to start looking at how they can look after their health, so it prevents them having to require unnecessary admission. Because sometimes, if we understand our body, we can then be more proactive in looking after it, such as exercise, making sure that if we're given medication, we just don't take it. We ask. I mean, that's what I used to do when I was in nursing. If I gave medication, I'd say to them, this is your medication. Please tell us the side effects. And in fact, I'll tell them what the side effects were. And I feel that that when the patient is vulnerable and in hospital, you do lose self-confidence. You do become dependent on the medical profession telling you what you're supposed to do. And it's those individuals that challenge it and say, well, no, I don't want that medication. Tell me more about it. And they're the ones that are seen as difficult clients. So the program I run, which is Bedfordshire Health Radio, is really about self-advocacy, sharing information about services, but also educating and empowering the community to be able to self-advocate, because that is what's lacking. And unfortunately, policies, I've been involved in developing policies, and it's shown to me that the policies are not working. What's the point of having a complaints policy when in fact the patient is disempowered and their voice is not listened to? And my experience being on the other side as a patient truly demonstrated that this is what's happening. I spent all my years developing policies, monitoring policies, and realized that safeguarding policies are not working, complaints policies are not working, and there's no readdress.
Well, this is very interesting. What we're going to do is put at the end of this program a contact email. People can get in touch and find the alternatives that you're providing. A lot of people are frightened of hospitals naturally, but when you're having to contend against the system as well, it's a double whammy. You cannot cope. Lots of people now are taking their friends into a consultant's room, not for a second opinion, but to make sure that everybody, doctor, patient, understands each other, and you've not got the dominance of one doctor with one patient. It's all
Well,
one-sided.
yeah. Well, the other thing is, years ago we had the Community Health Council. I was a member of the Community Health Council, and individuals were able to come to the Community Health Council and make a complaint, and we will go and represent them. Now, that's gone, the Community Health Council. We've got Health Watch. Health Watch do not advocate for patients. They don't deal with complaints. So there's no system now available to patients where they can really have their complaints addressed. Community health councils have gone. Health Watch, are they, what are they there for? So we've got the Quality Care Commission. You make a complaint, they don't even come back to you about your complaint. I had one of the patients that were there with me sent me a note to say, Valma, please help me, because she was concerned that she was going to be given an injection. And I sent that off to the Care Quality Commission and informed them. She asked me to contact the Care Quality Commission, which I did. Do you think they've contacted me in terms of... So who is there for the patient? Who is there for the service user? And so, especially if you're elderly and you've got no voice. And what I observed made me realize that where I thought, when I was on the other side as a social worker and a nurse, I was providing a great service, only to find out that once they're out of the system, once they're in the system or out of the system, they're left to their own devices, unless they've got a family advocate or somebody there to represent them. But there's that, and if they haven't got that, they're left. And I'm a professional and experience what I experience. I can't imagine what someone is experiencing with no knowledge about the processes, what procedures, what help have they got. I even went to my professional organization. They said they can't help me. I'm a member of two significant organizations. I sent them my complaints, told them what happened to me. All they could say, we're sorry to have heard that. And it makes me think, what's the point of being a member of these professional organizations when one of their members have been subjected to degrading treatment, breach of human rights? And all they can say, we're sorry to hear of your concerns, but we can't help you. Why am I paying my membership fee?
We've got to end this now, Valma. It's been fascinating. We are going to keep in touch about this. There's lots of stories to be told, lots of things we've had no time to mention. But one thing we want is an improvement in the situation, a drastic improvement. We're fed up of continually hearing from all politicians, whichever party they're from, oh, we'll get to grips. And it just gets worse. So let's make a stand over this. Thank you so much. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Rodney. I appreciate it. Let's just hope that we can improve services based on the issues of policy, breach of policy, but the patient's voice matters. No point having a complaints policy or safeguarding policy when it means nothing. Is it just a tick box?